Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Nanette K. Hartley, but I do prefer to be called Nan, and I am here to walk you through your shell for Chem 111 online. Now, this may not be exactly your shell, but it will look exactly the same as your shell. Everything will be in the same place and should look exactly the same. So let's start with what you should see here. Now, you may see an additional announcement before this. It may say under construction, in which case you can dismiss that or it will go away eventually. Okay, once I'm done with the work in that particular course, then it will go away. After that, you will see these start here, okay? And it will give you the welcome to the course. This is me. I prefer Nan. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. That is not a big deal. It will tell you a bunch of things to do. So we're going to talk about the course checklist. I'm going to open that, and I am viewing this as a student. So should be exactly what you see. Okay. We'll talk about the first homework assignments that are due by the due date for your course. That's 4 days into the class. So just in case this is recorded at a different time or a different period from when you're looking at this, it's 4 days into the class. Okay. Read all the announcements, check back for announcements, emails, discussion posts, that kind of thing. You're going to watch the introductory video. There'll be a link to this introductory video once I'm finished recording it so that you can get oriented with the course. You'll want to view the schedule. Okay, and we'll talk about the schedule and what that looks like. I'm going to open that in a new tab. If my... Okay, I'm going to duplicate this because my life is not cooperating with me at the moment, or I can't think my way through it at the moment, which happens. I'm getting older, so stuff happens. So we'll talk about the schedule in just a couple of minutes. You will need to create your link to Alex. So Alex is where we're going to do all of our homework in our virtual labs. We will need to create a link to Alex using the information on how to get into Alex. You need to have that done by that fourth day within the class. Again, here for summer 2025, that's the 12th of July, and that's summer 2. So you'll need to have done that. There is a link to Alex, but there's stuff you need to do before that. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. There are exam handouts that you will need to get and download, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. There are some surveys that you're going to be asked to take after you've done each of your virtual experiments. We are collecting some information about how you feel about those experiments. So I want you to sort of review those experiments after you've done them and review the videos that you've watched about them and give me some feedback about that. Just so you know, that feedback is not reviewed during the time of the course. It's reviewed after the class is over. So I just want to know how you feel about them so that I can get some information about what we need to do to make this a better class. Okay, but I will not look at that so that it can impact your grade. I do that later. Okay. So it won't impact your grade at all. All right. There is a place in the assignments where you'll see a placeholder for that, and it has nothing to do with your grade. My placeholder is just there so that I can give you points once you've taken it. So I can see that you've taken it, and I can give you points for that. But it has nothing to do, like what you said has nothing to do with the grade that you get. You will be able to see my availability, and I'll talk to you about what that looks like in just a few minutes. And then there's a list for success. So now that I've opened all of those wonderful things, let's go and talk about each of those. So the first thing I wanted to be able to talk about is the schedule. So what you'll see with this schedule is that we have some dates and the lecture numbers and what the topics are for those lectures, the chapters and sections in the textbook, which you'll find in Alex, and then the lesson in Alex that goes with that. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff here. So this is a virtual class. None of this is done, where you have to meet with me at all. So this is all asynchronous. This schedule is meant to keep you with where you should be at any given time. Now, obviously, you can do this however you want. It's up to you. You're an adult. You can do this however you want. But this is the schedule that I would keep if I were a student in this class. Okay. So this is how I would manage that work. Okay. Your first test is going to be the second weekend of this class. So the 18th to the 20th of July. That's exam 1. It covers lectures 1 through 6. So you'll see that we cover 1 through 6 in the first week and a half. All right. We are going to cover some new material after that. So the reason that we do that is because I want to make sure that you've had time to deal with all of the material from the first test before we take it. Okay. So there is some new material that comes after that. Right. I tend to find that people do better on the first test if we've started into the newer material after that, because it tends to solidify some things once we move into new material after that. Okay. So there is a reason and a rhyme to what I am doing. All right. So we will start with our equilibrium. There is a lot of stuff about equilibrium. It is a very heavy set of material. This will give you the chapter in the Alex textbook that you will be covering for that, and the sections out of that textbook that are covered with it. Okay. I highly recommend that you read that textbook and the sections in it. Okay. The Alex homework that you've been given, okay, these are the names of those Alex homeworks, are based in those sections in the textbook. Okay. Now, if you can't do the Alex homework, if you're struggling with it, then there is some stuff that I have given you within the course materials that you can look at. Now, you might notice that there's no content that you can really see here. There's a reason for that. You have a couple of homework assignments that you're supposed to do at the beginning. So one of those is getting signed into Alex. That's a really big thing. Okay. The other couple of things that you need to do is you need to do a couple of quizzes. Ooh. I'm sorry. I don't understand what happens. Every time I get on camera, I yawn. I don't get it. I really don't understand that. But those quizzes, there are 3 of them that you'll need to be able to, that you'll need to have done within those first couple of days of class. Okay. So this is by the 5th day of class. So the 13th is the due date for this particular section. Right. So you'll have an acknowledgement activity, a scavenger hunt exercise, and the lockdown browser and responses monitor test. What you'll need to do to be able to see the rest of that content is to take this acknowledgement activity. Now, that acknowledgement activity is a quiz. I was feeding this to the student. Okay, hold on. Let me go back into the quiz. So if I go into this, now, right now, I can take this. I have given myself an exception so that I can take it now. And I have no qualms with showing you this. I hereby acknowledge that I have read and agreed to the information presented in the following documents. By my acknowledgement, if I am found in violation of any of these policies, that violation can lead to disciplinary action up to and including expulsion from this class and reporting for academic misconduct. Okay, so I've read the course syllabus. I have read the lecture schedule. I have read Dr. Nanette Nan Hartley's syllabus addendum, read the course policies. I acknowledge that there is a lab component of this course and that participation in the lab is required to pass this class. Okay. What that means is that you have to do all of the labs that are assigned in Alex. That is a requirement to pass the class. Okay. I have found the lab manual and reviewed the lab manual upon which the virtual labs were chosen. So there is a lab manual, you're supposed to read it. Okay. You won't be tested on it, but you are supposed to find it and read it. I understand that Alex is a required part of the class for both the lecture and the lab, and will set up an account on Alex to use through D2L for this course by the end of the first week of class. Okay. Failure to do that will result in you being dropped from the course. I acknowledge that a calculator capable of doing scientific notation and base 10 logs, which cannot connect to the internet in any way, is required for this course. Okay. TI calculators, all of them are capable of doing exactly what you need, but they cannot connect to the internet. Hewlett Packard calculators are a violation for most of them because they are capable of connecting to the internet. So they don't work. Okay. So if you're using a TI calculator, they are fine. HP calculators generally are a violation of what we're talking about here because they can connect to the internet and you can search things. So don't work with reverse Polish notation, which is the way that they work. So I acknowledge that I must notify Dr. Hartley before, during, or within 24 hours of a missed assignment to request additional time on it. Failure to do so in that period of time means I get no opportunity to get those points back. This applies to labs, homework, quizzes, exams, etc. Now, your exams are given over a 2-day period. Okay, and it's actually 3 days because it's like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? You have plenty of time to take those tests. There are very few situations where you will not be able to take them on one of those days. So, and if you have a situation where you can't take them in on one of those days, you better have let me know about that in advance. Okay. I have had some things come up over the summer where people have said, hey, I'm going on vacation. Sorry. You should have planned your vacation better. Right? So that's not an acceptable reason to be trying to push a test. Okay? There are other things that have been, reasons that we would give, military orders, that kind of thing. Surgery is sadly something we can do. Death in the family, sadly, again, something that we will give you more time for. There are lots of things that I can think of that would be a reason to move that test. Okay. But vacation is not one of them. So I acknowledge that I am aware that for each hour I spend in class, approximately 1 hour of study time outside of class is required. I also acknowledge that it is expected that for this course, a student would be in class 12 hours in a week due to the lecture and lab components. So the total time per week expected is 24 hours. Some students may not require all that time, some may require more than that. Okay, now that's during a normal 7-week course. All right, this class is accelerated comparative to that, so there is more time than is expected for an accelerated course. All right, so for this one, I calculated it's somewhere in the initial information for the class. I think it's in here. So 4-week course breaks down to 42 hours in 1 week. Okay. It's a lot. It is a lot of time. Okay. I understand that that is a lot of time, but that is the commitment that's being asked of you. So make sure that you understand that that's the kind of commitment that we're asking. If you don't have that time right now, it might be a good idea to drop the class for now and find a different time when you can take this class. Okay. So once you've submitted that, then you can come back to content and things look a lot different. So you've got a lot more material that you can look through. This is all the material that's related to this course. Okay. So you'll be able to see how to sign up for Alex, which you couldn't do before. Okay. This gives you all the instructions for signing into Alex. Okay. I need to update that date. Sorry. I need to update the date that's right here. I apologize. So this will tell you how to get the code that you need and then how to put that code in here so you'll be able to access this Alex link, right? So you'll be able to access the Alex link. Once you've done that, you will be able to sign into Alex. Now, what happens when you do that is that you will be given access to Alex. on the back end, you're going to be given access, and then you will be on your account charged $87.99 for this particular book. Okay. You need that book and you need access to this course, because if you don't have it, then you're going to be in trouble. All right. All of your homework, which is 20% of your grade, all of your lab stuff, which is 25% of your grade on top of that, is there. So that's 45% of your grade that you're looking at that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the textbook. That's important. Okay. So if you opt out and you miss the date by which you need to opt in, then you're going to have to pay for the book separately. And that's $112.50 comparative to the $87.99 that you would have to do, that you would get if you did it through the back end. Okay, so signing up this way and then getting charged on the back end. Now, when you get charged for that, that is something that can come out of your financial aid, will be paid for because it's text and materials. So it can be paid that way. So if you have, financial aid that's coming to you in whatever form, it will take care of that. Okay. So that is something that we have. All right. So that will be how that's taken care of. So you'll get your code from the red shelf. You'll be able to put that in when you come to the Alex, and that will then get you so that you can get signed into the Alex. Now, I've already done that. So I can open this link and it takes me, and it won't take me there because I'm not a student. So it won't let me in that way. So unfortunately it says, yeah, no, I'm not going to let you do that. So I have to close it. So I can't come in that way, but I can show you what it looks like in just a second. And what I'm going to do is out of the student view, and then I can go back into the Alex part, and then I can get into my Alex. So this is a slightly different view, and I'll get switched into the student view so that you can see what that looks like. And there are a number of things that you're going to have to do when you first come into this. Now, if you've been in 110 here, then some of this stuff won't be there, but I can't guarantee what will and what won't. So you probably will have to go through some of this stuff, not all of it, probably. But anyway, it will walk you through a few things. I get the option to skip things. You don't necessarily get the option to skip things. It is in your best interest to do the initial knowledge check. The reason for that is it will show you any deficiencies that you have from what was supposed to be known from 110. So if you don't remember everything from 110, it'll show you what you don't remember. And it will give you the option to go back and learn that material. Okay. So you can say, I don't know. You can, do things to, here are the tools help. Here's the Alex calculator if you need it. This will take a little bit of time, but it is a good idea for you to have done this so that you know what your deficiencies are, if you have any. Okay. Now, we don't use this in an interactive mode. Okay. So there are, there's a bunch of stuff in here and it says, hey, you don't know all of this stuff. And I can go and look at that. You are not required to close those gaps. This is just a way for you to know what your gaps are. So if you're having trouble, you can come in here and say, okay, let me close gaps in this topic right here, or in this topic right here, or in this topic right here, and that'll help me. Okay, so that's what that's for. Now I can continue and I can, do the start my path, and that'll help me with that. But what you really need is to go here and see the assignments. So that's where your homework is going to be. That's where your labs are going to be. So that's what you'll need. You can also get to the textbook. So remember we talked about getting to those sections that you need. Now, if you want a printed version, you can get one. Okay. But if you want the ebook, you can open the ebook here. And then you can look at where's the table of contents. I need to go to chapter. Let's see, where's my schedule? So it says chapter 14, sections 1 through 5. So one of my windows down here, chapter 14, sections 1 through 5. And so I can come down here and I can look at chapter 14 and I can read all of this. I can look at the videos that they have. I can get definitions of these terms. So I can look at that. I can get definitions for any of those terms. If they talk about recall in this chapter, and if I don't remember, I can go look at it. If I wanted to see, see this section, okay, I could go look at that, depending on what we're doing. I can look at all of these diagrams that are here so that I can understand what's going on. I can look at everything that's here. There are ways for me to understand what is happening. Okay. So these are ways that I can interact with these things. And these are student hotspots so that you can get a better understanding of these materials. And these are some questions that it asks and the answers for those questions. Okay. So you can see those as well. All right. So, when I was a student, I would read this and I would do anything and everything that it gave. Why? Because I wanted to understand things. I wanted to know what I could know. Did it teach me more than I needed for my test? Yes. But I had time for that. And I was incredibly curious about what it was that I was doing because I was a chem major. So that was what I wanted to do. You don't have to, right? It's not necessary. But that's where this is from. Okay. So that's your textbook sections and how that correlates to your schedule. So those are the textbook sections that you're looking at. And the other thing that it talks about is getting to those homework assignments. Now, since this is a text, I can close the text because I don't need that to look at those homework assignments. And I can come in here, go to those 3 lines and say assignments. And, I did that review module. Now I'm looking at these exam 1 assignments. This is the chemical equilibrium. And you can see right now, I can't get into it because it's not open yet because class hasn't started. But if it was open, I could come in here and start looking at that particular assignment. This is the start date. This is the due date. So this is a couple days before that, actually a couple days after that first test is due. So this is how many attempts you have. You can do it as many times as you want. And this is the final submission date. Okay. So 8/2/2025. And that's, the last date that I will take it for actual credit. Okay. What I have done this term, instead of giving you hard due dates, a couple days before the test, which is what I normally do, is I've given you as much time as you need to do this. I highly recommend that you do this before each test. So exam 1 homework should be done before exam 1. Exam 2 homework should be done before exam 2. Okay? And they may decide to come in here and change those due dates before class starts. So, and actually I haven't set any of the due dates yet. So I need to come in here and do that. I'm sorry. Because the lab due dates haven't been set yet either. I apologize. So the labs are here. You will see what those due dates are as soon as I get them set. So you'll see where those are due as well. And again, once class starts, all of it will be open. So you can do it as early as you want. Okay. So those are your homework assignments, the labs and the lectures. And you can filter this by quizzes, homeworks, labs, the one module, and the one knowledge check if you choose to do so. Okay. So those are your labs and your homeworks. Okay. So close this out because that's how I got to that. Yeah, that was my other things that it opens. So I looked at that success checklist. So this talks about the amount of time that's required. This talks about, things that I recommend if you're going to do really well in this class. Okay, and I'll let you read through all of this wonderful stuff. I'm not going to talk about any of it. Some of these things are links to some things that I like to talk about: problem solving in the scientific method, test taking, and sig fix. Okay, so these are all reviews for material that would have come from 110. All right, so that's stuff you can look at. Again, this is your schedule, and you have due dates for. Actually, there are no due dates. Why is there no due dates? Oh. It's not formatted correctly. I have to fix that. Sorry, I'll fix it. So the due dates are actually down here. I need to move this so that they're up where they're supposed to be. So these are the due dates that are associated with each of those things, and I will fix this so that it all fits on one page because that's how it's supposed to look. So those are your due dates. It talks about your exam handouts. Okay. So your exam handouts for these guys, they're 14 pages. You need to have a printed copy of these exam handouts so that you can use them when you take your exams. Those tests are written with the assumption that you have these available. If you are taking the test without them, you are at a significant disadvantage because you're expected to have them. Okay. I'm expecting that you know what these formulas are for these anions, that you know what the these molecular masses are for these, that you know what all of these lengths and temperatures and volumes are, that you can do those conversions, that you know the names and the formulas for these things. So you can go between, manganese and Mn, so that you can convert between those things. Right? Because it's absolutely necessary that you can do that. That you can go between this length of meter and how many inches that is. Right? That you're able to go between the number of bonding and non-bonding pairs to the molecular geometry, and therefore its three-dimensional shape, because that's important when we start talking about kinetics. All right. These are useful equations, i.e., these are the things that you're going to need to plug into when we talk about some of this stuff that we're doing calculations for. I don't expect you to remember those formulas, not at all. But you need to be able to find them, and they're all right here. Okay, so those values, those equations are here. But you have to know where to find them. And that means you need to be able to refer to this when you're working on your homework so that you know where those values are. Okay, this is a list of your strong acids and your strong bases. Okay, so if it's not in that list, it's not strong. This is the fun box. So you can calculate the pH from the H+. So you can calculate pH from the pOH, right? We can get from any one of these to any of the other values using the equations that we have, okay? So you need to make sure that you're able to work with that, because I expect you to be able to do that really quick, okay? You should be able to go from a pH and give me the H plus, the OH minus, and the pOH within 30 seconds. So those calculations should be really quick. All right. These are your solubility rules. You should be very familiar with working with these because we're going to have to work with those again when we talk about solubility product constants, so KSP values. These are common names, and I put these here because I use common names. They're very familiar to me, and I often forget that people don't know what they mean. So it's not intentional that I'm using them. I'm not trying to trick you. But if I use one of these common names, you need to know what those formulas are. So that's why they're here. This is a stoichiometry guideline. So if you know the number of grams, you should be able to get to the number of moles. And we do that using the molecular weight. Okay. So all of this is laid out here for you. So you may not remember how to do those calculations, but this is a guide to how you did them. All right. So you need to be able to work with that. These are specific heat capacities. So, note the number of joules per gram degrees C for those materials. We worked with those in 110. You may have to work with them again. Okay. These are solubility product constants. We will be talking about what those are, and these are some of the values for those. These are bond energies, which we'll be talking about a little bit when we talk about some energy values this term. These are freezing point depression and boiling point elevation constants. We may need to talk about these when we talk about enthalpies. Okay. Properties of salts so that we know if they're acidic, basic, whatever. Ionization constants for weak bases and their conjugate acids. We'll talk about that during equilibrium. Weak acids and their weak bases. We'll talk about this when we talk about equilibrium. Ionization constants for diprotic acids and their conjugate bases. We'll talk about this during equilibrium. These are all of our redox potentials. We will talk about this during redox. Okay, these are all reduction potentials. We'll talk about that during redox. Okay, this also shows the activity series, which we will talk about during redox. Okay, so all of this information is really important for you to be able to work with, and you need to be able to print these out and practice with them when you're doing your homework and when you're doing your practice for the test and when you're on your tests. Okay, the values that are here are consistent with what is in ALEKS so that you can use them while you're practicing in ALEKS. So those are your exam handouts. So please be aware that you need to have those available and you need to work with them. Now you can write on these when you're practicing in ALEKS, that's fine. But when you take that test, you need to have a copy you have not written on. And you need to show that when you do your, show me your setup for the test. So if I don't see you show me all 14 pages of this thing so that I can see there's nothing written on it, then we're going to have a problem. You need to show me that. And you need to have it printed out. So if you don't have a printer, go find one. Right? You need to have at least one copy of this that has nothing written on it. So this is a QR code that will take you to my availability. So my availability is available to you in bookings. So I have a bookings page. When you come to the bookings page for me, you will see when you can make appointments with me. And you'll see that there's nothing on Mondays, but there are times on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay? So there are times that are available. Now, I have some weird times. So 1 to 1:30 if you're going to make a 1 hour meeting. You can make 15-minute meetings. You can do 30-minute meetings. Whatever meeting times you want. Those are things that you can do. So those are the times when I'm available. All right. My office hours officially are listed on the my availability page as well. So you'll see my official office hours. But I am willing to make appointments with anybody during these times. Now, if you don't see a time during those hours when you can meet with me and you need to meet with me, send me an email. I am perfectly willing to make appointments with people outside of these times, but we're going to have to negotiate about when that can be. I have things that I do outside of work that I have to schedule around. So we're going to have to discuss what availability we can, when I'm available and how we can do that. Okay. So this is how we can do that. This means that if you see that this time is available, that it's not booked for something, then I am available for that time. Okay. So we're looking at July. These are the times that I have, like on the 9th. Week of the 15th. These are the times that I have available for office hours because these are just my office hours. And then on the 18th. So these are my office hours as they're listed. Okay. So that will show you my office hours. And you can book those times as you see fit. So that's my availability. Da-da-da. So the schedule, course policies. Again, I will let you read the course policies. I do have some couple of things that are a little strange. Only pen can be used in your lab documents. Since you're not in a physical lab, that's not really that big a deal to you guys. I do insist that your calculators cannot connect to the internet. Okay, so none whatsoever. I will not tolerate uncivil behavior on the course pages. So if you're being rude to other students, if you're being rude to me, then I will give you a warning about it. You'll get up to 3 warnings depending on how rude you're being. And then you'll be asked to stop interacting on the course pages. If things are really, really ugly, then that will get reported to the department head and to the head of the academic affairs, and you will be asked to vacate the course. There is a lab associated with this course, and you are absolutely responsible for doing it. The lab and the lecture are not separated for us. You have to do both. Okay? You cannot pass this class unless you do every single lab. Every one. All of them. Okay? So that is a necessity for you. One other thing. No work, no credit. So if you turn in to me an exam and you show me absolutely no work, just your answers, then if that answer is not correct, you get no credit. None whatsoever. I cannot give you partial credit because I don't have any idea how you got where you got. Realistically, I have the right to not give you any credit at all if you don't turn in your work. But I will not give you partial credit if you don't turn in your work. That work will be turned in to the assignments. Now, there are a couple of paper assignments for the labs. There's one for experiment 6, and there's one for experiment 7. Okay, I will ask you to do some surveys, as we talked about, and then your exam scratch will come here. Okay, so that is absolutely necessary. There are post-lab quizzes in D2L, and you are responsible for taking them. I don't mean them to be a bear. Okay, they're not meant to be a bear. They probably will look like a bear, but they're not meant to be a bear. When you do your work in the labs in D2L, there are going to be some questions it will ask you to do calculations. Okay, within those labs, there'll be a little paper clip down at the bottom of your lab notebook. So where it asks you to input the data, there'll be a little paper clip. And that will walk you through any calculations that you have to do. You are encouraged to screenshot all of that stuff and keep it in a notebook. Okay? I keep them in my OneNote notebook. Let's see if I can actually find one of them. This is my OneNote notebook. This is Virtual Lab 1. I have a printout that I have from my data that I collected for that lab, the graph that I made, so that was stuff that I collected there. Virtual Lab 2, this is how I, this was the reading on the graduated cylinder. This is the stuff that they, they gave me, was how to read that, descriptions of why it does what it does, how I calculate the different, the actual volume of the object when I have these two readings. This is a question that they asked me, and the answer that I gave, which is the right answer, the data that I collected, and the answers that I had. If I have any information about how I calculated that, I will write it in here. Things along those lines, that's what I will keep. And I can use that as a reference when I take those quizzes. Why do I say that? Because that's exactly what you would do if you were in a physical lab. You would write all this in your notebook, and then you would be able to use that notebook when you did the post-lab assignments. Okay, this is no different. Okay, so that is the expectation, is that you will use that information when you do that. All right. Your homework assignments, the lockdown browser and respondents monitor test, because you've got to make sure that you can use that before you take the test. The acknowledgement activity, so you can see all of the content, and then your scavenger hunt. So you'll need to go look for some information about what I said and where I said it and things like that. And then you've got to sign up for Alex. Failure to sign up for Alex will mean that you're not being reported as not attending this class. Okay. I typically respond to my emails within 24 hours, except on the weekends. I may not on the weekends. Okay, but I typically respond to my emails within 24 hours. They get pushed to my phone, so I try very hard to make sure that I don't leave you without an answer. Okay, I will check into the boards on D2L as often as I can. All right, so again, there are things I have to do outside of work, so sometimes that is not immediate. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. So I think that's everything I wanted to show you about that. Now there are, oh wait, hold on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the discussions. So your discussions are twofold. One, you have some quizzes or some surveys that you need to take. So make sure you take those surveys. And they're just about the labs that you did. How did you feel about them? They're all very soft-ended questions. And again, they have no bearing on your grade whatsoever. You either took the survey or you didn't. It's a 0 or 100. The only other thing I am asking for is an introduction. And I want your name, your major or your area of interest, why you're taking this class. Okay. I understand that most of you are here because it's in your path. You have to take it. But why? Why is it part of that path? Why do you think you have to take Chem 110? Why is it part of what you need to do? How does it relate? Why is it part of it? If you don't know, ask Google, ask ChatGPT, ask things. Why would I have to take this? Why is it important? Okay. I want to know, are you comfortable with math or do you need theory? Okay. It's important for me to understand what you prefer. Because if you're a math person, I can approach you with math. If you're not a math person and I come at you with a bunch of math, you're not going to respond well to that. Okay. I default to math. So I need to know if that will work for you. And then I want your word. So, for instance, I tend to be pedantic. Okay. Now, pedantic, as defined by the dictionary, narrowly, stodgily, and often ostentatiously learned. Okay. So I do have a lot of learning, and I am very picky about the meaning of words. And oftentimes I get very hung up on that. And it sometimes gets in the way of my ability to communicate. So when I am trying to make sure that you understand what it is I'm trying to say, I lose all ability to say what I'm trying to say. It's very annoying because I'm so focused on making sure you're clear on the words that I'm using that you lose track of what it is I'm trying to say. As you can tell, I'm very wordy. And sometimes it takes me too long to get from here to there. So it's okay to tell me, Nan, you need to be more direct. Nan, I don't know what you're saying. Nan, you've lost me. That's okay. You know, I may not like it. It might hurt my feelings a little bit, but you know what? That's my problem. It's not yours. So don't feel bad. Go ahead and say it. And I can ask my dear friend, ChatGPT, which I do use, and I believe that there are good reasons to use it, or ethical reasons to use it. I can ask my friend to clean up things to make them less wordy and to give them more professionalism and to make them clearer. That is, I mean, I've gotten to a point with ChatGPT where it tells me, please don't ask me to do that anymore because I know that's what you want. So unless you're asking me to do something else, I will assume that's what you want. I do it all the time. I try to use that tool to help me communicate in a better way. So that's the discussions. I talked about the surveys. I talked about your assignments. Again, there are 2 labs that are paper. So this is the redox labs. You're going to be balancing redox equations. So that will be done here. And then there's an oxidation reduction chemistry lab that there's no real equivalent for it in what we do in the virtual labs. So I've given you some data for that, and you're going to be doing it on paper. Okay, so there is information about that, and that is in content. Let me show you where that is. So in your lab related information, there is some there is some information about the lab walkthroughs. There's also, where did I put? A lab lecture schedule. So there are, for each of the experiments, there is a discussion about each of the labs to say, hey, here's what you need to do. Here are some pitfalls and problems that you might run into with the virtual labs, yada, yada, yada. Make sure that you're aware of some things. Now, you don't have to watch these, not required, but they are here for you in case you need them. All right. So there are things that you can work with. There's also some links to things you will need to help you with those particular experiments. So, like for that oxidation reduction chemistry lab, there are a couple of simulations that you will need to work with. There's an activity series thing that you get to play with. It's kind of fun. So it will help you to understand the activity series. You can open it here, or you can open it in a different open it in a new tab, and that way you can see it out here and see all the fun that it is. Okay. So if you have any questions about any of it, please let me know. And again, I think that's everything. If I think of anything else, I will post another amendment to this. But again, I think that's everything you need. All right. I will talk to you guys soon. Please let me know if there are any questions that you have, anything that you need at all. All of the videos are already posted. You should have access once you've taken that, done the acknowledgement, to everything that you need for this class. And the only thing is that nothing will open until the 7th, which is the first day of class. So, all right. I hope we have a great semester, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.